Hi, I'm James, and recently I reviewed Uncle Ivan's Weapons Emporium looking at the machine guns. I had a few comments to make on it, not all of them positive, but I thought I'd give Uncle Ivan a second chance, and I thought I'd have a look at the battle rifles one. Again, it's $3.99 off drive-through RPG, so it's not breaking the bank. 16 pages, but of that only 5 of them are actually the weapon details. A lot of it consists of the rules for adding equipment such as scopes, folding stocks and so on, which actually are the same apparently across the series by the look of it. So if there is a bit of repetition, you're getting about 5 pages worth of new material in one of these. So let's have a look at what we've got in it. Because I did comment on the previous one that there were some very odd choices. So we've got a page of American weapons, we've got the M1918 BAR, we've got the M14 rifle and the M1 Garand. Now of those, the M14 is probably the most useful. The beauty of bringing in the M14 is they were still in reserve stocks. The US Navy was actually still using them, I believe, in the time period, and possibly even the Coast Guard were using them, so there is a bit of variety there. It's something that they could easily pull out of stores and give to the late raised units. The M1 Garand, okay, not a common weapon in Europe I would have thought, but again probably pretty common in the States, so yeah, there's nothing against including that. The BAR, I mean, it was officially in US service until the 1970s, much to my surprise, and I believe some were still in stocks. I don't necessarily see them going to Europe. The interesting oddity I found with these is, for some reason, the American weapons are all damage for crit for 7.62 or 30.06, which is actually the same as a 50 caliber round in the rules. Every other 7.62 weapon, including actually in this supplement, is damage 3, crit 4, so just something I would change on there. I mean, looking at the statistics, there's nothing particularly unreasonable with anything there. I think possibly the rate of fire of 3 on the semi-automatic weapons in 7.62 might be a little optimistic, at least if you want to hit anything it is. But yeah, I'm not going to particularly criticise that. BAR rate of fire 5 seems a little high, but not unreasonable. So there's nothing I'm going to sort of jump out there. We then come to the German weapons, and these are odd ones to find. The Fallschirmjäger 42, FG42, beloved by people in first-person shooters. You know, everybody loves that weapon. Worth noting there were 2 versions. And they both had a folding bipod. Bipods not being listed on weapons is fairly common in this. The FG42 I could actually see turning up. At the end of the Cold War, quite a number were found in warehouses in the Soviet Union. So yeah, it could be a last-ditch issue. You then got the Gewehr 41. Now there are only 145,000 of these made, and they were pretty much abandoned. So they are very optimistic to see these. It does note they've got a reliability of 5, which is something that probably really wants dropping down, because they were withdrawn because they were actually unreliable. And then you got the Gewehr 43, which is the modified version of the Gewehr 41. Yeah, nothing jumping out in there. I think, you know, it's an odd weapon to include. There wouldn't have been many of them, but yeah, I can live with that. Moving on to the Russian, oh, I'll settle for Warsaw Pact because there is a Czech rifle in there. You got the AVS 36. Yeah, this was a very early semi-automatic rifle. There were only 34,000 made, and most of them were scrapped. So I think that's a very optimistic weapon to include. You then got the SVT-40, which was a much more reliable weapon that developed from it. Yeah, there might still be some of those around. I can live with that. You then got the VZ-5257. It's an interesting weapon because originally it was in 7.62 by 45, but it then became 7.62 by 39, which isn't a battle rifle round, that's an assault rifle round. And even though it's 7.62 Soviet, it's got a damage of 3 and a crit of 4. Again, I would suggest lowering those to the other 7.62 by 39 rounds of 2-3. Possibly as well lowering the range. It's debatable, that one, I suppose, because you could argue it's got a longer barrel and so on. So very odd choice for those. I actually wonder sometimes whether I'm picking these simply because I want another Russian weapon, or yeah, that may be the thought. We then come on to sort of, well, as settled as the other category. You got the Setme rifle, which was the Spanish rifle that the G3 came from. Yeah, it was floating around fairly commonly, so I don't have a problem with that. That kind of makes sense. Really weirdly, the text has probably got an error in here where it says uses 7.62 by 54mm NATO caliber. Well, NATO is 7.62 by 51. So I think there's just a misprint there. Stats wise, it doesn't look unreasonable. That looks fine. You then got the Shorshey. Yeah. A weapon that was so chronically bad in the First World War that the Americans, admittedly with a much inferior copied version, with huge manufacturing defects, actually started replacing it within 2 months, and troops would often abandon it for a 1903 Springfield, completely abandoning this concept of semi-automatic weapons just to get something that would shoot reliably. It's got some of these in 7.62 Mauser. Okay, yeah, I'm guessing that's probably the Polish, possibly the Finnish ones. Reliability of 3, yeah, I mean, even just an ordinary weapon would be that. It's entirely possible due to the age it's dropped to that. Or I would even argue an American one at the start point is probably that bad. I need to think what the reliability would be for that. So I don't know why that's in. It's such an obscure weapon. It's worth noting you never see it on film simply because most of them were destroyed very quickly and abandoned. They were just regarded as useless. You've then got the FN-49, which is quite a nice inclusion. It's not the most common of weapons, but it was fairly widely used. It's sort of the step before you get to the FN-FAL. So, okay, we then got the Japanese Type 64. Odd weapon is it was never exported from Japan. So I'm not quite sure why that was included. It's a generic 7.62 rifle. Not a lot to say for it. Although it is worth noting that the Japanese often used a lower power cartridge because of the smaller stature of the troops, I believe. So that's something that's not been looked into, something to consider. You've then got something I'd never heard of, the Gram 63, which is a prototype Swedish design. Well, when you realise that this was edged out by the G3 and it was never went into production, it seems an absolute waste of space to put it in, if I'm perfectly honest. You also get the anomalies with some of these that the prices don't really reflect the statistics. The Gram 63 is, for example, $100 more than the Type 64. And the only difference in the statistics is the reliability is 1 less. So it's actually a less reliable weapon costing more. Not quite sure why that's there. Last one was another nice one to see, which is the MAS 49. Now the MAS 49 was originally in 7.5 French round, which to be honest I would use the same statistics for. The version here is converted to 7.62. Now this version does exist. There were a number that were imported to the United States and converted. These were notoriously unreliable, however, and wouldn't have a reliability of 5. They were a very poor conversion with a lot of problems. But the French National Police converted some to 7.62 with a better conversion, and these would have the reliability of 5. But there were only 250 or so of these made. So it's sort of almost taking the best of both worlds for that. I probably would just use the stats as a 7.5 version. So those are the weapons. They come on 3 to a page. So that takes up 5 pages, and then, like I said, you then get all the additional rules for the magazines and everything. I'm not going to, ammunition. I'm not going to go through that because I did that in the machine gun video. If you do want to see that, there'll be a link at the end screen that you can have a look at for it. Well, I hope that's been useful. I don't know if I'm going to pick up any more of the Uncle Ivan books or not. There's some it's a nice idea, and I like the fact in a way it's done in game. I think that's a nice little touch. You know, there is somebody who's finding these warehouses, trying to sell stuff on. It's not quite how I see Twilight 2000, but that's a personal interpretation. I just think perhaps looking at some of the weapons one more time might have helped, and considering which weapons to include, because there are some very oddity type weapons in there. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please click on the like button below so that I know what people like and I know what to make more of. Alternatively, if you've enjoyed it and think you'd like to see more, please click on the subscribe button. That way you get notified by YouTube whenever I bring out a new video, and you never know, there might be something in there that you hadn't considered, because I do cover a variety of things on the channel. And finally, if you have a little bit of cash going, I now have a Patreon account. I'm always looking for patrons, because at the end of the day, let's be perfectly honest, it's a good way for me to get a little bit of money that will use to buy review items or to travel to museums and so on. I don't put a huge amount on that. At the minute, all we've got is one tier charging £1 a month, which just, as I say, helps cover my costs. See you soon.